Kia ora race fans from weigh-in, welcome once again. I was just saying to the boys on the panel, just when we thought a report to put racing back on the right track might hog the headlines for the next 10 weeks or even 10 months, the harness race fixing scandal has taken the thoroughbreds away from the headlines just like that. It's a moving world, isn't it, racing?
It is, tough times, but the show must go on, Mike.
It surely does, and it was a pretty good show yesterday at Wanganui too. That's going to be a focus for us today. But fellas, good news. There's been bad news all week. It's Great Northern Day for the hurdles and the steeples coming out of Te Aroha. All that coming up on Weigh In.
Spring racing took us to Wanganui yesterday. The new season, 3-year-olds in action, and the fillies in the O'Leary Stakes and the Herbie Dyke Guineas. A race steeped in tradition, the Wanganui Guineas. My first memory, Lador Lady beating a champion in Viandacross back in 1991. Roll on to 2018, and it was the domain of Bobby Dazzler. Let's go back and take a look at the race.
Well, what about Zed? Greta, wasn't like Zed's a horse who a couple of years ago was serving Clydesdale Series, winning one of the early season 3-year-old
Pretty
races.
fast Clydesdales, aren't they?
Yeah, look,
pretty fast half-cuts.
He's a remarkable story. We could talk about him all day. This race relevant for two very important things. First of all, the abstract failure of the two favourites. And there were even bets up to $10,000 on Botti, who Matt rode well and had his chance, just wasn't good enough on the day. The other favourite led, fellas, and he was attacked a little bit. There was a little bit of speed in the race. But
very strong tempo. Mick was one of the fastest run races of the day, even though it's 13:40. They've run quicker than the open handicap 1200, so they've really ripped along. It's set up for the off paces. I thought Bobby Dazzler pretty good, and also the third horse in so much as Mahaka. They were close enough to this hot speed, so they've been very good. Not a bad idea from back in 5th position at a lovely spot. Botti, he was on and off the bridle and never really at the races.
I thought the same thing. I know the tempo was hot, but as you said, the horses who are moving to the outside, and the horse who came up the inside of Mohaka was still there. I thought Botti would swoop on them, but look, Bobby Dazzler hits the lead here. He's got the side winkers on, of course, and then you think, oh, well, he's going to get beaten. The horse goes past him, but like he did on debut 2 starts ago, he fights back, and he's just a horse who wants to be there. Here's the finish of the Herbie Dyke Wanganui Guineas.
Bobby Dazzler, not a bad idea, starting to lift over on the outside, heads up, heads down, very close, very close.
And the colours of Humidor, of course, for the Carters. What a run they're having. Why don't we go back, though, and take a look at this protest, though, Mike? I thought it was borderline frivolous.
Yeah, look, I thought so too, to be honest. I mean, the other horse had its chance to get there. I think Bobby Dazzler just fought back too well for it, and he's just a horse who wants to be there. But
here we go. It's back at the 1200, 1100 metres, and when not a bad idea just eases as Bobby Dazzler crosses into that 1 by 1. The tempo was so fast at the time. I think it's nearly borderline advantageous that he takes an ease. Danielle's perhaps come in a touch early, when not that clear, but how much ground's he lost? Marginal, and that far from home.
Yeah. How do they view things 1,100 metres out?
Well, that's it. If I'm doing video form analysis of the race, 1,100, 1,200 metres from home, I'm factoring in maybe a multiplication factor 0.2, 0.3, so in
the margin was tight, though. I suppose it was worth a crack.
Oh, and also, these races don't come along every day for those sort of stables, so they're having a crack at it. I understand what they're trying to think, but so you're right. I'm not sure any protest is frivolous, and it's almost like a cynical foul in rugby. You have a crack at it and see you get away with it. But as I said, at the top of the straight, he had the back of Bobby Dazzler. He had the entire straight to get past him, and he couldn't get there. And that's maybe... I think the second horse is a really good horse, and I think both these horses now people start looking at and thinking, he'd be a nice horse to get up to Hong Kong.
So you're the punting man. The money on Botti? Was that ludicrous? I mean, I know they
don't get that back shoulder. That's how that works. I spoke to coach trainer Andrew Forsman this morning. He said, as Bruce pointed out, Matt was on the bridle, it just wasn't going. And I said, look, the idea was to take him to Australia for the Derby, and you can't really take him on that.
No.
So they'll need to take him somewhere else and give him a run. Just speaking about Bobby Dazzler, he's going to be nommed, obviously, for the 2,000 guineas, so he'll head to Riccarton, and that's the main aim. Spoke to Steve and he said, look, maybe not a Hastings horse, Bruce. He looks like Hastings might not be his natural go, like a track like that, but I suppose the tempo was good there. They might find another way to get to Riccarton. I wouldn't be surprised if the second horse got to Riccarton too, because he's a big, long strider.
Yeah,
Lovely big action horse.
Nice to see these emerging horses, because last year we had some good 2-year-olds like Sort of Osman, who's heading to Ruakaka next week to make his seasonal debut. But you need these horses coming through, and we see so much of it these days. You get those other horses up to go to Karaka, and those who can't make it just go to the trials and appear as 3-year-olds. And these two, the first two, and even Mohaka as a filly, have all come through pretty much out of nowhere.
Just before we leave that race, Red Beach pulled up lame there. They require a vet check for it to return to the races. And, you know, we were talking last week that Hawke's Bay may be the second-tier 3-year-olds. What does that make that race?
I'd be putting them on the same par at this stage.
Really?
Yeah. It's hard to line them up until they get on top of the ground, I think.
Which could be another month or two.
We had some stakes form in that Hawke's Bay race, which we didn't have here. These are coming off one win, midweek type races. They're on the way up. There might be more upside to this group of 3-year-olds, but the others already got that black tie.
I'd go third tier myself.
I think the upside's going to be in the 3-year-old fillies race. We spoke before about Botty not getting the job done for Baker Forsman. Well, Peaceful did, and on the preview show on Friday, and just when we were talking about the races all day yesterday, you thought to yourself, this is going to depend on how the track plays inside or outside, because the two best horses in the race were drawn 1 and 12, and that's exactly how it's worked out. It's worked out to the fact that Peaceful got to a nice place in the race, and the second favourite, the horse who started favourite, had to work that much harder, and it just worked out beautifully for the favourite, Bruce.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a hard-run race. It was the slowest in terms of tempo, over 1,200 metres. What a Smash has done a really good job off the front to keep going into fourth off what looked lesser form lines. Peaceful's in a great spot, 3 back. The two Tiaki horses perhaps a little disappointing on face value, but all honours here with Peaceful. $260,000 yearling and getting the job done here.
And she's a Savabeel, so that she's won 2 in a row at listed level. Now, they now give her chance. So we'll get to the end of the race and then we'll discuss the plans going forward. So the inside was on for the early part of the day, so she's in the right part of the track, but London Express has come very wide. I would suggest, if you reverse the runs, maybe reverse the result. What do you think?
Yeah, possibly. Two Class is very good from the back.
Yeah, it's just an effective ride from an effective draw, and it got it done. And the defensive tactics of the two Sharrock brothers sort of played against them just in the end.
Look, and it's still no disgrace, you know, to be beaten by a horse who is now heading to the 1,000 guineas at Caulfield. That's a very serious race, and I can understand they're a big operation, Libertinga's operation, and they want to go to the best races possible. So she'll head there. Whether she's up to that class, it's an awfully tough type of race to win. You're up against horses worth an awful lot of money, but she's a Savabeel filly, 260k. Bruce, she gets over there, she even runs second or third in a prelude of 1,000 guineas. If and when you want to breed from her or take her to the sales and sell her at Sydney or the Gold Coast Broodmere sale in 2 years' time, she's worth a lot more. You happen to snag a first, second or third of the 1,000 guineas, well, you're talking 7 figures, aren't you?
Absolutely. She's got 2 black type wins in New Zealand now, and adding to the CV, any form from Australia is going to make her immensely valuable. So
they're looking to go there with her, and I think the runner-up and the third horse will both head to Riccarton. So they'll go to Riccarton, which is becoming really shaping up Avantage, who's going to head to the Gold Trail in 2 weeks' time, and Melty, we saw one last week at Ruakaka. I still reckon it's shaping as the race of the spring. The 1,000 guineas.
Just off the stipes, Mark Hill's got 8 days for cleaning up 3 runners in a sort of incident. I think it was on the home bend, and Ritzy Sparkle, one of the Richards runners, it pulled up with vet problems, but it was sort of cleared to race, so it's just going out for a spell. Just on the also-rans, I quite like Secret Allure.
She travelled nicely into the race around the bend.
She bolted into it on the corner, but she sort of she just couldn't quite let down, and she was swapping
first
legs.
Up, no trial, I'm sure she'll improve from
Forgive
that.
it?
What about, so 3 for the day for Stephen Marsh. He had a big day, as did Danielle, but I like the horse in the first race, Little Cypher, like one of those typical early season 2-year-olds, and he's a little short couple thing, and that's him there in the pink on the outside, and you can see Daniel's punching here thinking, I want to get to the rail, because everybody does, because this race is 800 metres around one bend, and she can't get there. And you think at the top of the straight, and you've taken the shorts, he's $1.80, you think, oh no, I'm in a world of pain. this was one of the more unlikely things I think I've seen in an early season juvenile race, because Bruce, at the 200, he is beat. He is beat, the other horse runs past him, and you're thinking, early season juvenile, he'll spit the dummy here. Well, he actually took the dummy back out, put it back in his mouth and said, cop this. Little Sci Far by
First Rock's
Rios.
Cold.
Rios. So Rios beats El Rock. Look at this, he's beaten there. He is beaten. And at the line, he's actually going away again.
He's a brave wee horse, isn't he? The son of Rios. The first season sires, second and third. El Rocker, first rock, good, very good off. No trial coming into the race for the Sanders stable, and the Prasia filly back in third, Alto Potenza. Interestingly, none of them nominated for the Karaka Million.
No, because this thing's $6,000.
6,000, great story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Actually, he could almost jump in the feed bit, couldn't he?
He's a little fella. Look, do you think he's going to be in the Derby next year? Probably not.
No.
It would seem an awfully long way with his little short steps, but well done for them for getting him up and running when he's going, and the owner would have got a thrill worth every inch of that $6,000. So I'm not sure how it'll stack up as a form race.
I raised the question of having a 2-year-old. I know it's a race steeped in tradition, that the 2-year-olds at Wanganui in early September, but we're still 3 weeks away from the first Metropolitan 2-year-old in Australia, so are we going too early?
I can tell you something, Bruce, that won't be won by a $6,000 yearling. That much we do know.
Well, since I've got the job of the Stipes report on, words like unbalanced and bumped and moved in and awkward out and awkward in the straight were sort of words that were highly prominent in the Stipes report.
The favourite won.
Yeah.
Punters don't care. The favourite wins, they're happy. Paid $1.80. More people back the winner than back the losers.
Of course, I was at Riccarton yesterday watching the action down there. Let's have a look at a couple of the highlights there, starting with the race that the Sardines sort of... oh no, we're going to the 3-year-old race first, are we? We are too indeed.
Actually, a couple of 1,000-metre races there yesterday, and they make good viewing. They're quite fun. They're quite frenetic. I like watching quarter horse races.
What's the horse on the outside here?
These.
Yeah, the horse on the outside here is the one that's a serious 2,000 guineas contender, or considered that, William James. He probably won't make that race, I don't think, based on what he did yesterday. He was fired up from the moment he walked into the parade.
He's very exposed and keen, way out
but
wide.
He will make it in the end, I think.
Yeah, he seems a good sort of horse, son of Ocean Park. And Emily Margaret, though, able to turn the tables, and she just settled nicely at the back. And what was a pretty sedate tempo for a 1,000-metre race, she's been able to rip home out wide. Bred by the Archers, David Archer of Mufasa fame, and steams down the outside.
She's just improved on a couple of really solid runs in the middle of the winter, and talking to Kevin Hughes after the race, he thinks she'll just win the Canterbury Bell Stakes coming up in a fortnight, and she's obviously a contender for the...
she's got a big butt on her. She's got
1,000 guineas.
Big propulsion thing at the back.
Yeah, but William James is just all over the shop. Very green, very leggy sort of horse. He probably, the trainer, Joe Hillis, sort of suggesting that, the 2,000 guineas is a target, but it's only a sort of tentative target, and she may not take him there in the end. And he certainly looks like a horse that will make it in the end, but might not make it.
I think a lot of people... The markets come out this week for the 1,000 and 2,000 guineas, and you've got to have a crack. You've got to nominate, right? But once Avantage comes out and sort of Osman, and we start seeing some of these horses roll out, I think we're going to see a whole new level. I'm not saying they'll just win the guineas. Tiaka tends to win a lot of them. But those markets are going to be out Wednesday, and there's a stack of nominations. I think at this stage, everybody has to throw of the dice. And one thing which is interesting is in the last couple of seasons, we've seen wet tracks leading right up to like the Sarton level, which has made it really hard to get horses ready for down there. And I wouldn't be surprised, Bruce, if we see more people adopting the attitude of going to the South Island, bizarrely looking for firmer tracks than they're getting in the north to try and get ready for the Guineas.
They should take them down there in September. Leave them down there. Should be North Island horses running in that race.
Well, we've seen that, haven't we, with the Richards team going down the
Pikey did it last year.
Tony Pike's taking another team down this year, just looking for better tracks at this time of year.
It's just called professionalism, isn't it? Put your horse where it needs to be.
Who would have thought the South Island would have better tracks? But that's a conversation we'll talk about later.
Just always. Always. Wanganui.
Did you see Artico yesterday?
Yeah, Wirramu Pin got to the front at the top of the straight. He smashed over Shadows Cast on the home corner about 200 metres before this.
I think it'll go to the metric mile. Earlier days, this was race 3, you couldn't make any ground. And when you couldn't make any ground in a position more advantageously than the other runners, I thought Henny was very good. backing up on the back of that trial. So look, I think Henny's the horse to follow out of the race, but
should go to Riccarton.
Decker was. I actually didn't see this race, so he's flying sardine, wasn't he?
Continues to defy its stature. Look at it go on the inside. It's all heart. It's totally all heart. There was another interesting runner here, which was, of course, Nashville back at the tail of the field. He was looking to get that $1 million in stakes, and for running sixth, here's the state of the industry. Went all the way to Riccarton to try and get over $1 million. Ran last, didn't get a cent. Has to come home again.
Does he win another race ever?
Well, he'll get to the million, but
does he win another race?
Yeah, he could at Riccarton. Okay, yep. Cool. But he Katie Cowan said he didn't try hard.
Here's another Z.
Yeah.
When did you ever think you'd be watching a weigh-in show with two Zs inside the first quarter of an hour? Here's the final stages of one of the nicer races at Riccarton yesterday.
Kiwi Smiling Assassin to fight out third, but Zentessa, it's bolted in shades of Lake Chalice. Zentessa beat Galway Gary.
Will he be doing that again today? The featured jumps finale moves from traditional Ellerslie to, of course, lovely Te Arawa today, and gives a new dynamic, boys, especially to the Great Northern Steeplechase today, doesn't it? It won't be the same.
It's a great jumping track, Te Arawa, with all those live fences. They've even replanted that, or made a new fence around by that 600 metres under the palm. So it's all live fences, a terrific steeples track, and a good jumping track all round.
What about the field for the hurdles? 16 with 2 billets.
And a horse who's becoming a bit of a cult hero, you know, as the favourite, Jack Frost. But I wish it was at Ellerslie because I love the hill, not the hurdle, obviously, the steeple. But I'm glad it's gone somewhere. I'm glad they didn't park it for a year. Looking at this race, look, Jack Frost, we know, won the Grand National and was very good there. But the fact he was arrogant enough to go out on the flat and then win his next start is just... It just shows, you know, sometimes horses get in the zone, like clearly he's in the zone and he's happy with life and feeling good about things.
He was only here for a hit out.
Or the old joints aren't hurting him at all, and that's just what you want to hear. I'm not sure he'll win today, Bruce, but it's very hard to go past him, and if anything beats him, it'll probably win.
He's going terrific. His win in the National was dominant. He's come out on the flat here, and as you say, he's just loving the game at the present time. He's a huge chance.
He will have a decided advantage because he will have half the South Island who own him cheering him on over the last couple. The only thing he's probably got to do to win today is just jump a little bit better than he did at Riccarton. But if he manages that, he'll love the heavy track. He'll like the distance a wee bit better than a couple of the others. Is it going to be a sort of a... We're going to see Laykeeper here especially, but I suspect it could be a match race between the two up-and-coming hurdling stars, Galante and Jack Frost. What do you think?
Well, this Laykeeper is also in that promising rank.
He just pulls too hard.
Jumper, yeah. The problem is the trip, and we saw that in the National. He just goes a bit too keen to run out the extended distance. So this is Laykeeper and Henry Tudor, another chance in the race down at the bottom of the weights. And what was wrong with the winner as well? Let Me Buy at Black Day 59 to 1.
Would Richo have trained many jumpers at that level? I can't think of many.
Not really sure.
He's ridden a few, he reckons.
Yeah.
To win too.
You mentioned Galante. When Rogie brought Galante across, so I thought, what are you doing here? And when it was on the flat, I was like, God, what have you done?
He brought it as a hurdle.
It went to the hurdles, and El Lucador fell at the last hurdle, but it actually had a beaten when it fell.
It ran 5 lengths. Was it 5 seconds quicker than the open hurdlers that day?
Look, it's not well placed in the weights when you consider it's carrying 65 and the Grand National one is carrying 67.5. So look, I've got to pick Jack Frost on top, but not with... Only because I sort of want it to win. Yeah. I think if I was betting, I could lean towards Galante. Bruce, if you're having a punt on the hurdle?
It's a tough race for me. I'm going to go with Kip Kano. I think he's had a really good prep. He's a good sound stayer. He'll love a testing track. And
do you actually bet on the jumps or not?
Not particularly, no.
Well,
I love watching
it. Well, in that case, no one cares about what we do. What about you?
Yeah, no, Jack Frost to win it.
Do you bet on the jumpers?
Yeah.
You do?
And I love watching them, but, you know, it's only a 5 each way
too.
job. I'm not like you, 10 each way.
Cut it out. I'm not actually, tell you what, I am going to have a bet on the steeplechase. I think Perry Mason just... I just loved everything about him last time. I love his trainer, I love his rider, I love his fact he's carrying less weight than Shamal. There's the market, $3.20. Look, that's getting skinny enough, but the way he won last time, I think Aaron Kuru pushed the button because he wanted to get away and win. And yes, Old Countess made up a stack of ground. So this is the lead up, this is the Pakuranga Hutt Cup. And that's him in front in the red. And look, Old Countess is to the inside in the blue because she makes a stack of ground. Well, she makes it, but really, he pushed the button that early because he wanted to win. And I think today he can wait till later, Bruce, to push the button. And I think he'll just win.
6,800 metres, mind. It's
6,300 metres.
300, sorry.
It'll feel like
6,800 metres.
It'll feel like 10 kilometres on the track today.
But son of Zed.
This is like the Z advertisement show. But look at the get back to the third horse. It's incredibly hard to make a case for anything outside those
What about
two.
the Grand National form? I think because it's at Te Arawa, maybe the Grand National form, which maybe doesn't necessarily stack up at any normal Great Northern year, will stack up this year. So I really couldn't...
brings other horses into play, doesn't it?
Yeah, I couldn't split Chocolate Fish and Shamal. So I went Chocolate Fish Al.
Chocolate Fish just hasn't won many races from lots of attempts, and that's... When you're going to back them for the win, you start thinking, well, do I want to back them if they don't win very often? And I'm not being derogatory in saying that, it's just a fact of how he is. Shamal's getting up in the weights enough there. I thought there wasn't much between Shamal and Perry Mason, Bruce, but Perry Mason gets that 3 kilos, which at the end of what's going to feel like 10 kilometres could probably count a little bit.
In terms of a betting race, there's very little between those top 4 in the market for mine. I've settled on Shamal, Grand National winner, and I think the fact that the National wasn't run on a bottomless track this year just gives them something going forward. It's not going to bottom them out coming into this race.
I need to ask you a question about this. When you do your form and you have a bet, how much do you factor in jockeys? Is it a big part of what you do or not a big part of what you do?
Absolutely. It's, I've said to many a person that those computer betting teams in Hong Kong, the biggest factor in their model, like they might have 150 factors in the outcome of a race, but the highest weighting is jockey.
Yeah,
especially over distance too. Like Aaron Kuru is the man.
Well, look, I know there's plenty of good jumps jockeys, and it's an incredibly skillful thing to do. But he's a jock. He's now become the jockey I look for first in a jumps race.
Yep.
And that's not insulting anybody else. You've got to have a favourite. So
just informed.
He could be the top of the flat jockeys premiership if he had his weight
get
his weight down. Yeah, I think so. He's a beautiful.
He seems very skilled.
Yeah. And he played softball for New Zealand.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Did you watch Moonee Valley yesterday? Because
tried to, but
I had the feeling that Bonnevale was going to get beat because the Valley the last couple of weeks has just been red hot to the inside. So she goes to the Dato and she's got back in the field and there's been no tempo apart from the last 600. And Bruce, honestly, I was watching it on my phone yesterday because I was actually bizarrely at the All Blacks test. And when she got here, I thought, she's got no hope. I thought she was buggered straight away.
Yeah, no, it was set up for the on-speeds. Well, the horse just won it. A 9-year-old by Consolidator and gets a free ticket into the Cox Plate. He's running 4th, Magic Consul, in those red and white hoops. I thought Hartnell was quite disappointing, had a really soft run outside of a leisurely speed, so I think he was entitled to do more. Bonnie Barley, as you say, the way the race was run, she just couldn't get into it. Night's Watch, the former Kiwi, runs terrific.
Like him, don't you?
Look, he loomed up to win, and it was his first weight for age start, and he didn't win. With Bonnevale, she ran like the 5th fastest sectionals, but it's been such a wet winter here. I think all of our horses are going to go over there on the back foot. Maybe not Peaceful, because it's had a run, had a win, but most of the horses going to Melbourne are going over on the back foot, and I think that was the case here. The sectionals were against her. She couldn't win. She'll improve her stack. It wasn't a cancel, but it was definitely a, we'll need to do better next time. Night Watch loomed up to win here, and I thought he was going to win. But Magic Consul, the first time I've seen a major Group 1 race won by a 9-year-old in Australia for 6 years. Right. It was 6 years to the day, funny enough. Yesterday, it happened last time. Here's the final stages of the Dato, and Bonnevale's a little bit out of picture at the moment.
Yeah, does she...
Magic Consul holding on. Magic Consul won the Dato just from Holmes for Night's Watch.
Does she just need even a wee bit more of the softening of the track? She doesn't want it heavy, but, you know, with the injury and all the rest of it.
Well, she's been off for nearly 12 months too.
She won the Underwood last year on a decent enough track. I think she's fine. I don't think it'll do her any harm, but I just think that all these New Zealand horses are probably on the back foot and the tempo didn't suit. When I did the form for the race during the week, I thought the tempo didn't suit. Just on Bonneval, of course, there's the market for the Caulfield Cup, and that could change exponentially. That's the midsection there. Vinda Dance goes over this week, and so does John Snow. In fact, they're actually in the air as we speak now. They're flying.
Yogi was massive yesterday. Did you see him go yesterday?
Very good.
I don't know whether he's a serious contender for the Caulfield Cup. I noticed he's a nomination for the New Zealand Cup, but he went too good to come here.
Now, Kings Will Dream and Unforgotten are so good that I think they head the conversation for the Caulfield Cup outside the internationals, who I don't know that well, and then all the other conversations start. Like, they just dominate the market because she was so good last week in Sydney, and he's been so good in his 2 lead-up runs in Melbourne. I think it's getting harder and harder for New Zealanders to win the Caulfield Cup, but it's only a couple of years ago we managed to pull it off. But
I was probably thinking Yogi just to follow through the carnival wherever he turns up. If he turns up at a nice 2,500 metre race at Flemington, he might get the job done because he just kept coming yesterday.
When you watch that race and you see the horse who wins, Magic Console, it does bring into your mind that as beautiful as Winx is, and there's no pot on Winx at all because she's so good and she's a champion, we know that. But it might just be a rubbish year for weight for age horses. And I don't mean rubbish as in dreadful. I mean, Humidor's a good horse. But when you look at that page,
Kingsville Dream's pretty good.
Well, but I'm talking weight for age 2,000 metre horses.
Yeah.
And maybe the second best horse, and maybe the biggest danger to Winx in the Cox Plate won't be there. And she actually won overnight at Kemp, of all places, Kempton Park in England. Enable returned last night, 11 months away from the track. Last year's ARC winner returned in a 4-horse race and was just super. I mean, we don't have any vision because we don't take Kempton Park on trackside, but if you get a chance, jump on ukracing.com because she's a very good horse. If you've never seen Enable, I'm pretty sure Winx is the best horse in the world. Bruce, you know more about this than I do. But Enable must be awfully close to being the second best horse in the world at the moment because, man, she's good. And last night she hadn't raced for 11 months and she just jumped on the speed for Frankie and, gee, she's a lovely looking horse when she moves.
Be a match-up made in heaven, wouldn't it, to see those two go head-to-head?
And it's sad that they won't because when I go to this year's Cox Plate, and I'm really going to enjoy watching Winx and I hope she wins a 4th one, but again, there's no villain in the story. You know, there's no big baddie around the corner waiting to beat her up. And I know he was a little bit close last year, but I don't know, sometimes a good story needs a villain. I'm not potting Winx at all. She can only beat what they put in front of her, and she tends to do so pretty easily. But what would need to happen between now and October 27th for her to get beat in the Cox Plate?
Humidor, is he, last week on Trackside, he was saying, this is Darren Ware, that he was sort of more aiming at the Emirates and he might even bypass the Cox Plate.
He said that last
Surely.
year with Humidor until the week of the race. Yep. It was actually late nommed for the Cox Plate.
Right.
So
we ignore that?
I think Ware's playing games there.
Absolutely. He went so good last year, you'd have to come back for another crack.
Well, especially against that bunch. Even if you're in second, you get $500,000. I thought, yeah, $500,000.
Speaking of Darren Ware, we've seen a number of horses heading over the Tasman from New Zealand, but there's a horse from New Zealand heading that way to the Ware stable, the Group 1 winner, Age of Fire.
Look, I think he's going there for 2 reasons, Bruce. First of all, he needs that. He's not racing in these colours, of course, these days. He's in the Brendan and Joe Lindsay colours. But I think he needs a kill in Australia to help his stallion career.
Absolutely,
if that's possible. There's no doubt about that. Everybody watching the show knows that. And secondly, he just hasn't come up.
His trials have been very moderate, haven't they?
And I reckon they'll take him over to Wary.
Is that the reason why? Just some Wary magic?
Well, they could have raced him out of Te Akau and taken them across there from here. But so the fact that they have chosen not to do so, it's a very respectful and mature decision. They said, look, we can't get him going. We'll go over there. It wouldn't be the first 4-year-old stallion who's turned up and said, stuff you. And if we can get him going, good. And if he can't...
Change of environment for those sort of horses can be gold too.
And he's a big, a big heavy horse.
What's his target? What's his hit? Has he got to beat Humidor on the Emirates to achieve the gold, or is he shooting under that?
Well, with Wary, who knows? He could turn up anywhere. Just talking about Te Akau, he's not the only horse they're not going to have racing in the new season. I think everybody expected Ginger Nuts was going to be retired after what's happened in the Emirates last year. I mean, we love Ginger Nuts, and he's a Derby winner, of course, and won the Rosehill Guineas. And sort of a little bit sad, Bruce. We're not going to see the best of him. But to be perfectly honest, this story could have ended a lot worse. He could have literally died on the way to the barriers for the Emirates last year, and he didn't, and they've saved him, and he's going to have a beautiful home at Te Akau, and he's going to be spoilt, and people will go down there and pet him. And it's a sad end, but it could have been a lot worse.
Great team following him. They're very passionate with their caps on there, just left the screen. And
is there any chance he could be sort of a Clark of the course type horse, or is it too
He
bad
can't gallop at speed, so...
Right. But there's some talk about him leading out fields, but for major races.
Sort of an unlikely superstar, because I got the vibe, I don't know this, but I got the vibe that they weren't that keen on him early on. Couldn't really raise a gallop much.
He was late nommed for the Derby. He was a ready to run.
He
was late nommed for the Derby after winning at a track which they're probably going to close. Which one was it? He won somewhere, which you don't usually go to win the Derby. So it's a great story. Well done to Te Akau.
40-1 chance in Avondale Guineas, and then blew them away. And his Avondale Guineas was the defining moment, wasn't he?
And you
missed
know,
the start. And
Karen Fenton and others will get out there and just be patting him every day. She'll annoy him till he just thinks he'll be like, Karen, leave me alone. I just want
to
hang
go
out
back
here
to the
with my
races,
mates.
please.
Exactly. Leave me alone. But anyway, well done to Te Akau and all those involved, and Opie, of course, who rode with the Derby. It's a great story, and it's ended earlier than we would have liked.
Yeah, stop short.
All right, we're heading to a break here on Way, and we'll take a look at Australia racing, though, as we head that way. And it was Nature Strip, still looking for a slot in the Everest. He runs a track record here in Moonee Valley. Hootson, the Magic Millions winner, she's come back terrific. She didn't look up to the best of them last preparation, but this is nearly a Group 1 performance from her, giving Nature Strip a bit of a fright.
And that's Scholes in third, of course. Now, Scholes is in the Everest. Nature Strip still can't get a slot, which is interesting. Now, 3-year-olds had their first go. This is the Atlantic Jewel yesterday for the 3-year-old fillies.
Big day for Star Spangled Banner, Thrillster in those Rosemont red colours, mowing them down. The horse behind them, Assertive Play in those white colours, is the one with the flashing light. Very unlucky from the first crop of the Hong Kong star, Akeeb Mafeed. Up to Sydney we go, and it's...
No.
Michael Kieran. One bet for the weekend.
Exactly. The horse in the green and red was my maximum bet job, the Autumn Sun, and Kieran McAvoy must just hate me, which is there's lots of other people who do too. J-Max put him in the slot and pushed him into a gap he didn't want to be in, and it's just flowing home. If he took the 2.4, I'm sorry, that is literally my fault. And I'm actually going to text Chris Waller and say, Chris, I'm sorry, I won't have him.
And just hope you're not tipping Winks next week.
I took Penrith last night to try and stop them, and it didn't work.
Star Spangled Banner to the fore again. Home of the Bravers in the Everest markets. He leads all the way here over D'Argento, and the third horse, Trapeze Artist, was the Everest favourite, but drifted out after that.
It's at $6 now. Yeah. I'm wanting to forgive all that.
It was an awful track yesterday, wasn't it?
It
wasn't too bad for this race.
Oh, yeah. All those colours back on the
Lean Mean
fence.
Machine, part owned by Raffles,
What's the story behind it?
expected to be competitive on a heavy track given his form from Brisbane, but he mows him down late.
Jonker in front from Graf. Lean Mean Machine coming with a big run late. Lean Mean Machine bursting through the centre. Big win in the run to the Rose. Lean Mean Machine beat the favourite Graf.
Yeah, the Massara report's been absolutely massive. Of course, it's been put in a little bit into the background this week by all the harness racing scandals, but look, there's so many different parts to it, 17 recommendations. I don't think we can talk about them all and confuse them. Obviously, one of the big ones is the outsourcing of the tab, and that's a conversation for another day predominantly. The most emotional thing is tracks. We all have home tracks. Lots of people at home have home tracks which have been closed or will be closed. So what we did was contacted people from around the country, from a range of clubs, and sort of said to them, look, what do you make of this? What do you make of the report? And what do you make of someone potentially closing your track? Well, for example, Tim Antonio, we're not costing anybody anything. We can still make a go of this ourselves, so why shut us down? Now, that's a decent argument. I'm happy enough to hear that. And I think during these conversations about this report, you need to be able to listen to both sides of the argument. There's a little bit of the Donald Trump, I am right, and you must be wrong from both sides. The interesting one's Avondale, because Avondale was the centrepiece of this supposed $200 million deal, which is something like that.
Yep.
Now, at the moment, they are unwilling to publicly comment. So we're going to make an offer. to anybody at Avondale who's on the committee, if you want to come on the show, we'll give you a camera. We're not going to edit it. Say whatever you want, because there's people like us and people at home who care about what's going to happen to Avondale and your attitude to that money of sailing and going to the industry. And I think if you're on a committee or you're the president, you've got a responsibility to do that. Now, you may not want to talk to us, that's fine. We'll send a camera out, or you send in a quote and we'll put it on the show next week. But Bruce, I think that's very confusing for people, because it's an enormous sum of money and it's quite central to the some of the developments this report mentions. And if Avondale want to fight that, that's interesting. And if they say, no, we're happy to do that for the future of the club or the industry, well, that's fine too. But I think at some stage you need to make a comment.
Yeah, for sure. But going back to the track closures, like for me, two of the tracks dearest to my heart, Waipa and Cambridge, both are scheduled to close, and I think it's the best thing that could happen when you see this Greenfields proposal, and with the three clubs, Te Rapa, Waipa, Cambridge, working together, pooling their assets for the greater good.
Yeah, as I said, Avondale's the main one. Wairarapa, they're upset about the lack of consultation, and
the consultation starts now. Well, you know, a lot of them have jumped off the cliff here a bit and said, you know, we weren't asked, we weren't consulted. It's like, well, here's the line on the sand, and we start talking now.
Well, Sheldon, I think if people put their time and love into these clubs, they have a right to be emotional. Yeah. And it might take them a while to be unemotional or less emotional about that. I'm fine with these people doing this. I come from Greymouth and they closed the trotting track there, and I was really gutted to see it close. And these people are gutted. And they've got a right to have their say, because the racing minister's had his say and John Massara's had his say, and we've screened those extensively. So these people have a right to have their say, because they've gone to work in their gumboots and dug up holes in the track for 20 years, and they can have their say. Is it going to come to fruition? Probably not. I'm absolutely certain that we have to close tracks. Everybody I've been in this conversation with has said we have to close tracks. So no one is saying this shouldn't happen. They're just saying, I don't want it to happen to me. And that's just human nature.
It's a time warp back to the last.
You went for a walk to Riccarton yesterday with your little camera. What did you come up with?
It was on my bike, actually. We actually rang around for the quotes from the clubs, and we also rang around to get some comment on camera. And surprisingly enough, Malloy from the West Coast was keen to front up and give us peace.
In the media this week, it's the Treaty of Waitangi all over again. What do you mean by that?
Well, it's the biggest land grab in 180 years, isn't it? It's that course is owned by the people of Reefton. They were around long before New Zealand Thoroughbred Racing. The course was around long before Thoroughbred Racing, and the TAB was around. And yet suddenly now we only got it because of the TAB and New Zealand Thoroughbred Racing. I'd leave viewers to make their own mind up about that. You know, it's a land grab.
So, were you surprised that the suggestion of 5 clubs and racetracks not existing in the future came up in the Massara report at all then?
No, I wasn't really surprised. I was disappointed, but I wasn't really surprised by it. I very much look forward to the report. I'm on a fair bit of social media, and I made it clear that if we were collateral damage shutting down the track, I'm resigned to losing the race day. I always was. When the all-weather comes here, that we would lose the race day. What I object to is losing the asset to the people of Reefton.
What is the usual relationship between clubs on the West Coast? How would you describe it, you think?
Oh, it's very good. I mean, we have our ups and downs, we have our arguments, but at the end of the day, we share a secretary, a CEO, we share the starting gates. Obviously, we have to cooperate. Kumara hasn't got stabling or anything, so that'll all have to be built when they become the dominant track, because all the horses stable at Greymouth, Hugadiga, or some stay at Reefton. But yeah, there's a good relationship. As I say, we have our ups and downs. As like anything, there's a bit of jealousy with the Kumara having a huge day from the public point of view, but yeah, that's human nature.
So in terms of the club relationship in normal circumstances, I think you were telling me last year at the Reefton races that with the weather that went through the West Coast last year, Reefton may have offered Kumara to swap dates to help them out?
Well, it wasn't really so much swapping dates. Kumara we knew couldn't run, and I got a tip on the Wednesday and I offered it to them. I said to them, Reefton is there and ready. Reefton was in a lot better condition than what Kumara was. I offered it to them, but to be fair, there was no acknowledgement. There was no thank you, no thank you, anything. It was just like I had never offered it. And Thoroughbred Racing didn't know that I'd offered it until the next day. Had they known, I think they would have made them take it.
So how does that go to the relationship of the clubs on the West Coast? You offer a way out for the Kumara Club and they just ignored you?
Well, I can understand their disappointment. They were really disappointed that their day was gone, you know, like, and they think of it as their own, like, as it being pretty special, and it is. Maybe they just weren't ready for the offer. I don't know, but at the end of the day, you'd have to ask them about why they didn't take it up. I don't know.
Have the West Coast clubs ever had a meeting, unofficially or officially, about the fact that there are 5 clubs and 5 tracks on the coast? Have they ever had a discussion about that going forward, you know, under the idea that perhaps, you know, we've got too many?
Well, I did suggest to them about probably 10 years ago when the Racing Industry Board, I think it was the Racing Industry Board at the time, had the sort of money for that sort of thing, that maybe we should look at an amalgamation, maybe we should look at an 1800 metre track, something like Cromwell. Got a lot of resistance from the older members of the committees. They said, oh, if we have to do that, you know, we'd rather chuck it in. And I thought, well, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make it drink. And I just let it lapse. At the end of the day, racing is a sport I love. I love the people, I love the horses, I love the stories, I love the optimism, but it doesn't pay the mortgage.
Yeah, he's indicative of a lot of people involved in smaller communities and smaller clubs. Brian Malloy, he loves his racing locally, he wants it to stay, but he knew it was going to leave Reefton. By the way, just for transparency's sake, Brian's actually my cousin. I wasn't part of the interview, I didn't speak to him, I haven't spoken to him for a year until after the interview was recorded. But look, it makes a really interesting point. Like, there's too many clubs there, and I don't want to see them close. But a few people have said this week to me that this report must be adopted in its totality. Well, there's some parts about the report I don't understand. I know nothing about, but I know about Kumara and Greymouth. And Kumara's stuffed.
Yeah.
It's stuffed. It's Hokitika has to close. And Reefton is closing. We know this, and that's fine. There's going to be track closures, but that's the wrong track to leave open on the West Coast.
Well, you can ask any West Coaster. If you know, ask Brian during that interview which ones he'd keep, and of course he said Reefton because it's the best track.
But also you keep a moto because 25 years ago they used industry money to build a concrete grandstand there.
Yep.
It's earthquake compliant. It's just easy, and the track works. And there's stables there for when Dummy Myers and those guys come across to put the horses. Now, Kumara, I can't explain to you how stuffed it is. I've run around it, and I'm not slagging John Massara and his team. They are right. We need to close tracks. They've just got this fact wrong. And anybody who's ever walked the Kumara track knows this. You tell people in Greymouth on the coast, they're just laughing. They're like, that's ridiculous. Yeah. And if there's one error in the report, then stop saying we must adopt this in its totality, because that's just nonsense speak. We're at a process now, and Bernard Saundry and the Minister for Racing both said, we're going to talk to these people.
Go into consultation.
So we're going to talk to people about things. And I don't believe they'll close Greymouth, because you can't have one track on the coast, because then you can't have a circuit, and there's no point having a circuit because no one's going to go to the coast for one day of racing. But Sheldon, that was one person. Brian, you spoke to. Who else did you get hold of on the ground?
We got a hold of a good cross-section of stakeholders, actually, everyone from past presidents of clubs or ex-jockeys, and even a part owner of a former champion racehorse called the Phantom, when we collected a montage of people trackside yesterday at Riccarton to see what they thought about the Massara report a week on.
Well, I think the main thing, I suppose, is the carrot of doubling the prize money, and the big controversy, I suppose, is how we get there. And I think John's made a pretty good suggestion in his report. It was always going to be a little bit controversial, and yeah, I agree with 80% of it, not all of it. But I think we need to do something to improve the current situation, and if it's all or nothing, I think it's all.
What about track closures? Thoughts on them?
Yeah, look, I think it needs to happen. I think there's going to be some debate about which tracks are closing, and I'm not sure it's 100% right at the moment, but I think we certainly need to be doing something and basically improving that racing product and making it more attractive for people to punt on.
All-weather track at Riccarton?
Yes.
All-weather tracks, do they attract the punting? Possibly not. They take a lot of getting used to, and I think the thing to do would be the real wet weather is on the west coast of the North Island, the Manawatu and the Waikato. Surely you would put one in there first and see how it went. They're an expensive investment. As far as I can see, we don't really need one down here at the moment, and I would definitely start with one in either up there somewhere and see how it goes.
If you were asked and you could put something in the mix that would secure the racing future of New Zealand, what would it be, you think?
The racing future of New Zealand depends on to my way of thinking, depends on people becoming enthusiastic about the sport or maintaining the enthusiasm about the sport. So we've got to make sure the big days, the cup days, keep on working, and we've got to do perhaps more for the general interest throughout the year. How do you attract people to a place like Riccarton? Well, it's a nice way to spend a Saturday. The facilities need to be good, etc. So obviously money should be pouring into a place like Riccarton. But the big days like at Kura and Kumara, there are people there who don't have much to do with racing who've got plenty of money, and they may suddenly say, well, it wouldn't be such a bad thing to race a horse. So you wouldn't want to lose those days.
Having scanned the Masara report, no doubt in detail, what are some of the best bits of it for you think?
The best bits are track closures that should have taken place many years before now to stimulate the racing product and distribution of funds out to the owners that put so much in.
I have a difference of opinion on the track closures. I think we've got a shot at a lot of them. I think probably a slight review with some of the people actually in the industry, like trainers and owners, would be better than what it is at the moment.
Before they go with
what it is at the moment, yes. I'm not saying we should have more tracks or anything like that. I just think there's some tracks there still don't need to be there, and perhaps the odd one with better facilities would be better.
What about the all-weather track option in Christchurch?
I think the all-weather track in Christchurch and anywhere else, I think it'll be great as long as they get it right. If they get it right and we can trial and race on it regularly, I think it'll be far better for the industry all round.
If you just finally had a say in the Otago Southland scene, what tracks would you keep open and why?
I certainly wouldn't be closing Oamaru, Timaru. Wakawhite is a one-day club that invariably doesn't happen, and why would they keep that going if Oamaru is a huge track for winter gallopers in Otago and Southland, and so I don't think enough thought has been put into that, and obviously that's discussions that have still to be had, but just looking at figures of on course or whatever their figures might look like doesn't reflect the passion that the people have for that particular club.
So that's the cross-section view of the South Island people I caught up with in Riccarton yesterday, and I just got the feeling, Bruce, from the feedback and the pushback there yesterday, that a lot of the track closures in the South Island, the Oamarus and the Timarus, are quite dependent on whether an all-weather track goes ahead at Riccarton. They seem to be shoving a lot of those race meetings, or the idea is to shove a lot of those race meetings towards the all-weather surface and then sacrifice a couple of these other tracks.
I haven't seen the all-weathers in action. I'm a big fan of them in Asia. Whether they work as well in New Zealand remains to be seen. But what we've got at the moment is a massive problem with the maintenance of tracks and tracks getting smashed during that winter period. That's the time of maximum damage, and they're not getting well repaired. And that's where your all-weather track takes the load off the racetracks during that busy winter period. And it's also a critical time when you've got your nice spring horses coming back. We've had horses going to Te Teko, 5 horses each meeting, 10 lots of transport to Te Teko, $350, and when you get there you're trialling on a heavy track, and these are nice young horses.
Yep, no doubt. So I understand both sides of the argument. People there have put their money and time into the industry, and you can see they're disappointed. There's going to be track closures, and there's going to be a large number of them. Whether it's 20, I don't know. But Bernard Saundry's been very good about this. He said, come talk to us. He said, either send your submissions as a club to the minister or send them to us, and we'll listen. And we'll try and make a case. Already they are thinking that some of the tracks named in the report aren't tracks they want to close. Their future venues plan comes out middle of next month. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out. As I said, I've not spoken to one person who said we shouldn't have track closures, but they just don't want them to be their tracks, and there's room for discussion here. But I agree, if you're talking closing Timaru and Oamaru, and you're not going to have an all-weather track up and racing by that stage, is that realistic in the South Island? And everything comes down to price. Is it worth spending $10 million in the South Island to build that track when it doesn't seem as badly affected as somewhere like Cambridge, which is a major training centre with a lot of very expensive horses and people who are looking to go to these classic races? The horses who are trained at Oamaru and Timaru I mean, are they horses that you would spend $10 million to have them have an easier spring? Is it worth that money? Even if it comes down to money. If it cost $100, you'd build it. If it cost $100 million, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
And the figure's got to be somewhere in the
think
middle.
there's a big split here. I think there's the money equation, which is generally based around the North Island, and I think the heritage and the history of New Zealand racing has to be in consideration with this report going forward. And I think the South Island is possibly the venue or the part of New Zealand where they have to be conscious of that. So if they don't spend money on Riccarton, and this is a personal opinion, I don't think they need an all-weather track in the South Island at all.
I agree with you. So, I think Bruce, you would know more about this than us. It's a must at Cambridge.
Yeah.
It's a must. And I think...
Well, we're going to put in an all-weather track there, whether they race on it or not. Yeah. We've always had the plan to have a training venue there all-weather.
Yeah, but I agree with the South Island. The South Island's a very parochial place. People who live in Greymouth don't like Westport. Yeah. It's only 100 k's up the road. And if you take Timaru and Oamaru out of play, there's a region there of 300 kilometres where there's no major racetrack. And people who live in Timaru might not want to go to Christchurch, and they might not want to go there. And it's a small price to pay, I understand. But when you start closing these places, people who would be coming into the racing industry and buying horses because they're trained by their mate or somebody they know locally, don't buy horses anymore. And there's no better example of that than Wellington and harness racing. They closed Hutt Park, and you never hear anybody in Wellington discuss harness racing, ever. And that's what you lose. And I realise they're going to have to close tracks, but you also have to talk about collateral damage. And yes, on the West Coast where there's 5 tracks, you can close 3 without that collateral damage because it's 20 minutes down the road. But for Oamaru and Timaru, is that the case? I'm not sure that's true. I'm not saying I'm right, and lots of people have different opinions, but I also think before you start closing tracks, the Minister's already said, and Bernard Saundry have already said, we're willing to listen. And I think that's a cool approach. I think you have a problem when some people say they're not willing to listen.
It surprises me that clubs on their own haven't actually had this discussion before, because the closure of tracks, as the Masara report points out, has been in the mix as early as 1970. So we've had a lot of the South Island opinion. Let's see what the North Islanders say.
Well, on the face of it, it looks very good. I think it's a very positive thing for New Zealand racing. We obviously need something, and it's definitely taking some positive steps to try and get some returns to owners, which I think is the most important thing for New Zealand racing. I think the owners are the people that have suffered. You can win 3 or 4 races in a year and you still struggle to pay the training fees. So I think that's good. I think the centralisation of the racing is a good idea. Getting rid of some of the extra courses. I know it's tough on the locals. And I think one of the things I think is from around our point of view anyway is the local, I think they call it the Greenfields project, where they getting the Te Rapa, Waipa and Cambridge into a new sort of a super track. I think for the future that sounds very good.
I do believe that there's going to be a fair bit of resistance to some of the, the mergers and things like that, but the industry's in dire straits, and sometimes you just got to give and take a little bit. So I think that is something that's going to take a bit of time to get through. As far as the outsourcing of the TAB, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think there's huge cost savings there, and that's money that can be put back into the industry. I don't think it's something that can be done lightly. I think it's got to be thoroughly reviewed and make sure that we do get our airtime, make sure that, we try and keep it as it is for the people in New Zealand now, rather than just wall-to-wall racing, because that's not our way. We're not, I don't think New Zealanders and all are big punters. Some of them are, but I think the average person's not a big punter and just enjoys the spectacle of it.
John Masara, he's turned around New South Wales racing, and if he can do something similar to that here, well, we've got to be in a better place. So, look, we're 100% what behind John said, and look, the number one thing is let's get on and do it.
Your thoughts around centralising racetracks? I mean, it's going to be some hard calls to be made around there. What's your feeling around that?
Yeah, absolutely 100% behind it. Look, let's have less racetracks and better racetracks. And, I think you see it in the NRL now. A lot of these teams, they don't play in their home stadiums anymore. They go to a stadium where they can accommodate crowds and they've got good surfaces to play on. And, I think we've just got to get with the 21st century a wee bit.
Case in point last night with the All Blacks playing at Trafalgar Park in Nelson,
Gee, it was
a
cold.
sellout.
It was really cold.
But it's good that they got to play in a place that don't see those things, and maybe racing's got a bit of a feel for that. I'm with BJ Anderton. I think calm the farm with the closing of tracks and let's get down to consultation.
Look, there's smart people there, and they've invested their livelihood into the game. Nigel Tyler's a smart guy, Andrew Scotty's a the people in the South Island, they all know what they're talking about, but they don't all agree.
Yeah.
Which means, and we can't live in the middle because we can't just keep going the way we're going. We need to close some tracks, and I think some of them pick themselves, like Thames, pick themselves better than others. But I also think that this is not an easy thing to solve. This is not a right and wrong situation, Bruce, and some people are going to have to say maybe we're not going to get where we want out of this.
I actually heard a very good quote through the week. Edward Rennell from the Harness Racing New Zealand, he said 90% of the Matara report we should be implementing straight away, and let's not worry too much about the 10% that we can't do. Let's get on to this.
Yeah.
What's the 90% though?
And that raises another question, like...
What's the 10%?
The RITA, the transitional authority that's going to be set up, I mean, it's got to be set up sometime. I'll be honest with you, I don't know who's going to be running racing in this country on January the 1st. I don't know.
Leave that till last, I reckon.
But you need to start it somewhere. I mean, someone's got to be in charge of the joint, surely.
Yeah, but you leave that till last. That seems to be the thing that everyone wants to get done first. Leave it till last. Get the money coming back to the industry from the government and the race fields legislation.
Get that in first. That's the first thing. The bidding levy and the race field legislation. That's 25 million, which goes. But well, tell me, when do you think the first track will be closed in New Zealand? What's your best guess? Of the ones on the report, what's the first one to go and what time frame? Maybe Thames has already gone?
Yeah, it'll be up north, won't it? The coast will never close anything.
I tell you one thing, I just don't want to disrespect the people on that, because they've put their lives into this, and I'm not going to say to them, we can tell you what to do, but the most important thing of today, from the people at Avondale, tell us what you're going to do. Tell us, and we'll tell everybody at home, and then maybe we can start a conversation, because Bruce, at the moment, that's the gigantic $200 million elephant in the room.
Well, that's where the consultation comes into play. This has been put out by the Minister, and now we need to put our heads together and get it done.
I'm looking forward really to the response, and we'll probably touch on this next week and the week after, from the powers that be, the hierarchy, after a week of what's been basically pushback, how they're going to start the consultation process and what their headspace is.
I'm looking forward to the Great Northern. I'm looking forward to not thinking about it this afternoon. I'm looking forward to watching the hurdles and the steeples and having a bet, even though I don't do it very often. That's what I'm looking forward to, because it's weighty stuff, fellas. It gets tiring.
Yeah. It's
make
good,
the
though.
caps, make New Zealand racing great again.
Yeah.
Or make Frosty shouting the beers again is a great cap.
I'm going to back Perry Mason today. I apologise to the Perry Mason team. I'm going to back him today. I'm sorry.
See you
after the autumn sun. I
Just
probably
don't go
shouldn't do
near Jack Frost. Let him. He's got plenty to do.
You can have Jack.
He's got the South Island.
He's your boy.
Yeah, Jack's
he's
the
your
man.
boy. Hey, thanks for watching, Way, and we'll be back next Sunday, hopefully.